Hello, welcome everyone to today's edition of the Civil Service Promotion COMPRO Recruitment CBT examination question and answer video presentation. Today we'll be looking at the public service rule and we'll be looking at 50 questions from this public service rule, which will be taken from chapter 10 of the public service rule under the title Discipline. Today's presentation is going to be unique one because after this presentation, which is the seventh series of our presentation, we'll be taking subsequently other important topics in the PSR, which are promotion, appointment, and leave. So look forward to the next few series that will be chunking out. This will be basically questions that you might most likely see under the topic discipline in the PSR. Now, this is the seventh series of our public service rule video presentation. If you haven't seen the other six series, I want you to check the description section of this video for that series. But before we start, I want to give a shout out especially to the newest members of our dear community, which is these few members: Gladys Chiemelam, Kelvin Rayashim, Olamide Abikoye. These are the new members in our community. We want to say welcome. And if you are community is still open for more persons who want to join this community, you can click the join button below this video in order to be part of this community, where you'll be first to get our video presentations days before it will get to others who are also our viewership. You'll also be able to get other members only exclusive perks, which we will introduce in the long run of all our presentations. So welcome to our dear communities. Today we want to look at 50 questions on the PSR under chapter 10, which is discipline. And this presentation is going to consider first, we're going to look at the introduction, which is in section 1. Under section 1, we'll be considering some few questions. And the first question we'll be looking at is question 1, which says, according to PSR 10, chapter 10, section 1, paragraph 1, what is the primary duty of every public officer? A. To obey only superior officers. B. To acquaint himself with the disciplinary rules and regulations in force. C. To attend training once a year. And D. To report disciplinary cases to the media. The right option is option B, and option B says to acquaint himself with the disciplinary rules and regulations that are in force. And this is in line with the PSR Rule 10.01.01, which states that every officer must acquaint himself with the disciplinary rules and other regulations, ensuring compliance and accountability. Option B. Question number 2. The disciplinary rules in PSR Chapter 10 must be read together with which document? A. Public Procurement Guidelines. B. Code of Conduct Bureau Act. C. Guidelines for Appointment, Promotion and Discipline. And D. Civil Service Handbook. So which do you think is the right option? The right option is option C, and option C says guidelines for appointment, promotion and discipline. So you see, these topics are very important in the PSR rule. After discipline, we have appointments, we have promotion, and then leave is attached to it. And just like Mrs. Jane Koyede requested in our comment section in one of our videos, we have decided, my team and I have decided that we will make it special, this topic special, so that every viewer can be able to benefit from each of these topics, and we know questions that will come out from each of these topics. So the right answer is option C, which is guidelines for appointments, promotion, and discipline. So the right option is option C. Public Service Rule Chapter 10, Section 1, Paragraph 1 specify that Chapter 10 should be read in conjunction with guidelines for appointment, promotion, and discipline that are issued by the Federal Civil Service Commission and the Office of the Head of the Civil Service of the Federation. That book is very important and all civil servants should read it. Possibly, we will start bringing out videos on these guidelines for appointment, promotion, and discipline. The right option is option C. Question number 3. Who has the constitutional power to dismiss or discipline officers in the Federal Civil Service? A. Head of the Civil Service of the Federation. B. The Federal Civil Service Commission. C. The President. And D. The Permanent Secretary. Now, look at this question very well. It says who has the constitutional power to dismiss or discipline officers in the Federal Civil Service? Now, the right option is option B. The Federal Civil Service Commission has the power to appoint, promote, and discipline discipline officers in the Federal Civil Service. So the option Federal Civil Service Rule, PSR Rule, Chapter 10, Section 1, Paragraph 2 vests the authority to dismiss and exercise disciplinary control over officers in the hands of the Federal Civil Service Commission. So the right option is option B. Question number 3. The permanent secretaries and heads of extra-ministerial offices have full disciplinary powers over which cadre? A. Grade 15 and above. B. Grade 06 and below. C. Grade 10 below. And D. Grade 13 and below. Now, take note of questions like this. You might most likely see questions like this. So the right option is option D. The permanent secretary and heads of extra-ministerial offices have full disciplinary powers over those in grade level 13 and below. And that is what the Public Service Rule Chapter 10, Section 1, Paragraph 3 says. It gives permanent secretary and heads of extra-ministerial offices full disciplinary powers for officers on grade level 13 and below, except for dismissal power, which means that they can discipline officers from 13 and below, but they cannot dismiss such officers. The power to dismiss lies with the Federal Civil Service Commission, even for that level. Question number 5. What is the exception to the disciplinary power delegated to permanent secretaries under PSR 10/01/03? The power to promote, the power to transfer, the power of dismissal, and D, the power to query. What is the exception? This, you should know the answer to this according to what we discussed in question 4, that the exceptional power that is not given to them is C, the power to dismiss. The power to dismiss is an exception under PSR 10/01/03, and it is only delegated for officers on level 06 and what and below. So that means the permanent secretary and heads of extra ministerial agencies have the power to only dismiss or officers on grade level 6 and below, but they don't have power to dismiss officers on grade level 13 and below. They can only discipline such ones, but they cannot do what? Dismiss them. So the right option is option C. Question number 6. Who can approve the removal from service of an officer on grade level 10, who can approve the removal from service of an officer on grade level 10? A. The Director General. B. The Board on recommendation of the Federal Civil Service Commission. C. The Head of Administration. And D. The Permanent Secretary. The right option is option B, and option B says the Board on recommendation of the Federal Civil Service Commission. So the right option is option B. Public Service Rule Chapter 10, Section 1, Paragraph 4 provides that no officer above grade level 6 can be removed from service without the approval of the board, ensuring due process and fairness. Option B. Question number 7. Which officer can be dismissed directly by a Director General or Chief Executive Officer without prior board approval? A. Officer on grade level 14 and below, officers on grade level 7 and below, officers on grade level 6 and below, and only contract officer. Of course, the right option is obvious, and the right option is option C. And option C says officers on grade level 06 and what? And below. Public Service Rule 1001, paragraph 4 permits Director General and CEO to dismiss officers on grade level 6 and below, but only based on the recommendation of the Junior Staffs Committee. Option C. Question on paragraph 8. The delegation of disciplinary power under PSR Chapter 10, Section 1, Paragraph 3 aims primarily to A. Reduce the workload of the Federal Civil Service Commission, B. Grant full autonomy to MDAs, C. Weaken the authority of the Commission, and D. Simplify dismissal procedures. The right option is option A, and that delegation is meant to reduce the workload of the Federal Civil Service Commission. The delegation of power to permanent secretaries and heads of extra-ministerial offices was designed to reduce administrative bottlenecks and enhance disciplinary efficiency in ministry and department. Option A. Now, if we go to section 2 of chapter 10, we'll look at general inefficiency. The first question we'll be looking at is question number 9, which says, according to PSR 100201, what best defines general inefficiency? A. A single act of misconduct. B. Occasional lateness to duty. C. A series of omission or incompetence showing incapacity to perform efficiently. And D. Failure to obey an official order. The right option is option C, and option C says a series of omission or incompetency showing incapacity to perform effectively. That is what we define as general inefficiency. And that is what the Public Service Rule 100201 defines it. How is how it defines general inefficiency? Now let's look at question number 10. Whose duty is it to identify and record the shortcomings of a subordinate officer? A. The head of civil service. B. The minister in charge. C. The superior officer. And D. The Federal Civil Service Commission. Whose duty is it to identify and record the shortcomings of a subordinate officer? The right option is option C, and option C says the what? The superior officer has the duty to identify and record the shortcoming of a subordinate officer. So, under PSR 100202, every superior officer must observe and document any fault or shortcomings of subordinates to improve their performance. Question number 11. What should a superior officer do after noticing inefficiency in a subordinate's performance? A. Report directly to the head of service. B. Dismiss the officer immediately. C. Transfer the officer to another ministry. D. Bring it to the officer's notice and record the warning. The right option is option D. And the option D says bring it to the officer's notice and record the warning. And that is what the PSR inform every superior officer to do. And the reason for such recording of such warning is to promote improvement or retraining of that individual. Question number 12. According to PSR 100202, what can management do to improve an inefficient officer? A. Send him on compulsory retirement. B. Redeploy or train him in another area suited to his ability. C. Suspend him for 1 month. D. Recommend him for disciplinary committee. The right option is option B. And option B says you should redeploy or train him in another area suited to his ability. Public Service Rule 100202 provides that an inefficient officer may be redeployed or trained where his skills are more useful. And the right option is option B. Question on paragraph 13. How many written warnings must an officer receive before removal for general inefficiency? A. 1, B. 2, C. 3, and D. 4. The right option is option C. And option C says 3. The Public Service Rule, section 10, chapter 10, section 2, paragraph 3 clearly states that 3 written warnings must be issued before commencing removal procedures for inefficiency. Option C. Question number 14. Which of the following statements about female public servants is correct according to PSR 100204? They must resign once pregnant. B. They can be retired because of pregnancy. C. They cannot be forced to resign due to pregnancy. And D. They must apply for unpaid leave during pregnancy. The right option is option C, and option C says that they cannot be forced to resign due to pregnancy. PSR 100202 states that no female public servant shall be required to resign or retire on account of pregnancy alone. Question number 15. What may management do if a female officer's pregnancy interferes with her duties? A. Assign her lighter duties. B. Place her on forced leave. C. Terminate her appointment. And C. Reduce her rank. The right option is option A, and option A says you should do what? Assign her a lighter duties, and that is in line with PSR 100204, which allow management to assign lighter duty to a pregnant officer if her condition affects her performance. Question number 16. Who has the authority to terminate the employment of staff under PSR Chapter 10, Section 2, Paragraph 5? A. The President. B. The Minister of Labour. C. The Federal Civil Service Commission alone. And D. The Permanent Secretary or Head of Extra-Ministerial Office. Who has the authority to terminate the employment of staff under PSR Paragraph 5 of Section 2, Chapter 10? The right option is option D, and option D says Permanent Secretary / Head of Extra Ministerial Office. That paragraph empowers Permanent Secretary or Head of Extra Ministerial Office to terminate employment in accordance with due process. Question number 17. Before termination of an officer's appointment, what must be done? A. Pay 3 months salary in lieu of notice. B. Inform the officer of the grant and give opportunity to respond. C. Approve through the National Assembly. D. Publish the reason in a circular. The right option is option B, and option B says inform the officer of the grant and give opportunity for him to respond. That Public Service Rule, Chapter 10, Section 2, Paragraph 5 mandates that an officer be informed of the grounds for termination and be given an opportunity to defend himself, and that is option B. Question number 18. What must be done before terminating an officer's service for inefficiency? A. Dismiss the officer summarily. B. Refer to the EFCC for investigation. C. Suspend the officer for 6 months. And D. Issue written warnings and allow a chance to improve. The right option is option D. And remember, the option D says you should do what? Issue written warnings and allow a chance for the officer to improve. That is what must be done before terminating an officer's service for inefficiency. Public Service Rules state that before termination for inefficiency, the officer must have been warned 3 times and given a chance to improve or explain their poor performance. And that is in line with PSR Rule, Chapter 10, Section 2, Paragraph 5. Question number 19. What law guides termination procedures as referenced in PSR 100205? A. The Labour Act Cap 198. B. The Nigerian Constitution. C. The Civil Service Act. D. The Public Compliance Commission Act. The right option is option A. PSR rule says that the Labour Act Cap 198 guides termination procedures as referred in the PSR, and that is the legal framework guiding such termination and employment condition in the public service. Question number 20. When a permanent secretary decides to withhold or defer an officer's increment, what must he do first? A. Notify the Federal Civil Service Commission. B. Inform the officer in writing and stating the reason. C. Seek presidential approval. And D. Call for an oral disciplinary hearing. The right option is option B, and option B says inform the officer in writing stating the reason. This is what a permanent secretary should do when he decides to withhold or defer an officer's increment. He should first inform the officer in writing stating the reasons for deferring or withholding his increment. Public Service Rule, Chapter 10, Section 2, Paragraph 6A mandates that once a permanent secretary with delegated power decides to withhold or defer an increment, the officer must be informed in writing with clear reasons and duration if deferred. Question number 21. When the permanent secretary does not have delegated powers to withhold or defer an increment, what should he do? A. Suspend the officers pending approval. B. Refer the case to the Auditor General. C. Cancel the increment immediately. D. Report to the appropriate committee for a decision. The right option is option D, and option D says you should report to the appropriate committee for a decision. Report to the appropriate committee for a decision, and that is in line with the PSR 100206 paragraph 5, which requires that if the powers are not delegated, the matter must be reported to the appropriate committee for formal decision. Option D. Question number 22. If the committee decides that an increment should be granted after review, what should the permanent secretary do? A. Reopen the case. B. Appeal to the head of service. C. Implement the decision in accordance with Rule 100307. And D. Defer the decision for 3 months. And the right option is option C. The permanent secretary is meant to implement the decision in line with Public Service Rule Chapter 10, Section 3, Paragraph 7. I want you to review this and look at how it is in line with that Public Service Rule 1002 05 or thereabout, 100206A. That is it. So look at how it corresponds with that rule. So the right option is option C. The public service rule states that if a committee decide that the increment should be granted, the permanent secretary must act in accordance with Rule 100307, which governs increment implementation. So that's Rule 100307 is a rule that governs increment implementation. So the right option is option C. Question number 23. Who must be informed in all cases where an increment is withheld or deferred? A. The Accountant General and the Auditor General of the Federation. B. The Head of Service and the President. C. The Federal Civil Service Commission. And D. The Budget Office. The right option is option A. And option A says the Accountant General and the Auditor General of the Federation should be informed. This is in line with PSR 100306 paragraph 6C, which clearly requires that the Accountant General and Auditor General of the Federation to be informed in every of such cases. Question number 24. What information must be included in a letter deferring an officer's increment? A. The officer's date of appointment. B. The reason and the period of deferment. C. The salary grade level only. And D. The warning about dismissal. The right option is option C, and the right option is option B, and option B says the reason and the period of deferment. That is the information that must be included in the letter deferring an officer's increment. The reason must be stated and the period of deferment must be stated. So the rule explicitly requires that both the reason and the period of deferment should be stated in the written notice. Option B. Question number 25. What is the prescribed period of notice for termination due to inefficiency? A. 2 weeks. B. 3 months. C. 1 calendar month. And D. 2 calendar months. Take note of questions like this. You might most possibly see such question. The right option is option C, and option C says 1 calendar month. 1 calendar month. PSR chapter 10 section 2 paragraph A states that 1 calendar month's notice must be given in all cases of termination for inefficiency unless another period applies based on the officer's term. So the right option is option C. Question number 26. What should happen if it is decided that the officer must leave the service immediately? The officers forfeit all benefits. B. The officer should be paid a monument equivalent to the period of notice. C. The officer should appeal to the head of service. And D. The officer should go on half pay. The right option is option B, and option B says the officer should be paid a monument equivalent to the period of notice. The rule provides that when immediate departure is required, the officer must be paid a salary equal to the notice period instead of serving what? Instead of serving it. Question number 27. If an officer's leave entitlement is longer than the notice period, what should occur? A. The officer's leave is cancelled. B. The officer goes on leave and the notice period is absorbed by the leave. C. The officer receives cash instead of leave. And D. The officer leave is deferred. The right option is option B, and option B says the officer goes on leave and the notice period is absorbed by the leave. PSR chapter 10 section 2 paragraph 8 stipulates that When the leave is longer than the notice period, the officer is sent on leave and the notice period is covered within it. The right option is option B. Question number 28. What is the purpose of informing the Accountant General, Auditor General in cases of increment deferment or withholding? A. To ensure budget control and audit compliance. B. To obtain disciplinary clearance. C. To authorize additional allowances. And D. To initiate a query process. The right option is option A, and the option A says to ensure budget control and audit compliance. This ensures financial transparency and allows the two accounting officers to maintain accurate payroll and audit records. Option A. Question number 29. Under Rule 1002, paragraph 6, who holds the primary responsibility for ensuring officers are notified of any decision affecting their increment? A. The Director of Finance. B. The Permanent Secretary or Head of Extraministerial Office. C. The Service Welfare Officer. And D. The Head of Service. The right option is option B, and option B says the Permanent Secretary and Head of Extra Ministerial Office. It says the Permanent Secretary or Head of Ministerial Office is directly responsible for informing the officer of any decision regarding their increment. So the right option should be option B. Question number 30. What is the fundamental administrative principle demonstrated by Rules 100206 to 100208 according to Section 2? A. Punishment before investigation. B. Equal pay for all public officers. C. Confidentiality of financial records only. D. Transparency, fairness, documentation in personnel actions. The right option is option D, and option D says what? Option D says transparency, fairness, and documentation in personnel action. And that is what Section 2 of Chapter 10 is entirely all about. This rule emphasizes fairness, due process, proper documentation in all decisions affecting officer salaries and appointments, foundational principles in public service administration. Option D. Now we're going to look at the final section, Section 3, which is on misconduct. Under misconduct, we are going to take question 31 that says, according to Public Service Rule, Chapter 10, Section 3, Paragraph 1, how is misconduct defined in the PSR? A minor administrative omission. B. A specific act of wrongdoing or improper behavior inimical to the image of the service. C. An unintentional mistake at work. And D. A personal disagreement between officers. The right option is option B, and option B says misconduct is a specific act of wrongdoing or improper behavior that damages the image of the service and can be investigated and proved. Option B. Question 32. Which of the following is not classified as scandalous conduct under Rule 03, paragraph 1A? A. Drunkenness. B. Assault. C. Habitual lateness. And C. Immoral behavior. Which of these is not classified as scandalous conduct? The right option is option C, and option C says it is what? Habitual lateness to work. Habitual lateness is misconduct but not part of scandalous conduct category. Scandalous conduct category includes immoral and unruly behavior assault, and drunkenness. Question number 33. Under the PSR rule, misconduct can lead to which of the following? A. Promotion, B. Transfer, C. Termination or retirement, and D. Redeployment. The right option is option C. It can lead to termination and retirement once proven. Question number 34. Which of the following behavior is classified as misconduct in a PSR? A. Taking approved leave, B. Refusal to accept posting, C. Submitting report on time, and D. Wearing neat attire. According to the PSR, the option B is the right option, and that is refusal to accept what? Posting is a what? Is a misconduct. Refusal to proceed on transfer or to accept posting is a form of misconduct listed in PSR paragraph section 3 paragraph 1b and might attract disciplinary action. Question number 35. Which of these is an example of dishonesty in the context of misconduct? A. Being late once, B. Requesting leave, C. Declining a meeting invitation, and D. Taking office supplies for personal use. The right option is option D, which is taking office supplies for personal use. Dishonesty involves deceitful or unethical acts that harms the service, such as misuse or theft of government property. That is what? That is dishonesty. Question number 36. Who must first act when a superior officer has become dissatisfied with a subordinate's behavior? A. The head of service, B. The minister in charge, C. The superior officer must issue a written query, and D. The human resource department. Who must first act when a superior officer becomes dissatisfied? The right option is option C, and option C says the superior officer must issue a written query. Rule 10.03.02 requires the superior officer to inform the officer in writing and request a written explanation to exculpate himself. Option C. Question number 37. What happens if the officer provides a satisfactory written explanation to the superior officer? He should be punished, he should be transferred, he should be informed in writing that no further action will be taken, and D. The matter should go to a tribunal. The right option is option C, and option C states that he should be informed in writing that no further action will be taken. So if the officer exculpates himself, is informed in writing, and the matter is closed, no further action is required. Option C. Question number 38. If the officer does not fully exculpate himself or does not deserve punishment, what should happen? He should be suspended. B. He should be issued a formal letter of advice. C. He should be dismissed immediately. D. The case should be referred to the Federal Civil Service Commission. The right option is option B, and option B says he should be issued a formal letter of advice. And that is accordance with the Public Service Rule Chapter 10, Section 3, Paragraph 2b, which states that such an officer should be issued a formal letter of advice which he must acknowledge in writing. Option B. Question number 39. When an officer fails to exculpate himself and deserves punishment, which rules applies next? Public Service Rule 10.03.03, Rule 10.03.04, Rule 10.01.02, and Rule 09.01.03. The right option is option B, and option B is Rule 10.03.04. That is Chapter 10, Section 3, Paragraph 4. That the Rule 10.03 100302C directs that Rule 100304 should apply in such a case, outlining procedures for formal disciplinary actions which will be taken. Option B. Question number 40. What must the Federal Civil Service Commission do before acting on a disciplinary recommendation from a tribunal of inquiry? A. Immediately implement the recommendation. B. Seek clearance from the head of service. C. Call upon the affected officer to reply to the allegation. And C. Refer the matter to the presidency. The right option is option C. Their duty is to call upon the affected officer to reply to the allegation, and that is the right thing to do. PSR Rule 100303 mandate that the Federal Civil Service must first give the officer an opportunity to respond to a tribunal's allegation before taking action. Question number 41. What happens if the affected officer refuses to respond to the tribunal's allegation within a reasonable time? A. The matter is closed. B. The tribunal must reopen the case. C. The Federal Civil Service will proceed to enforce the recommendation. And D. The officer is automatically reinstated. The right option is option C. Option C says the Federal Civil Service may proceed to enforce the recommendation by the tribunal. If the officer fails to reply, the Federal Civil Service Commission may accept and enforce the tribunal's recommendation and take disciplinary action as appropriate. Question number 42. Which of the following best describe the role of the Federal Civil Service Commission in disciplinary cases recommended by a tribunal of inquiry? A. To act without due process. B. To rubber stamp the tribunal decision. C. To ensure fair hearing before taking disciplinary action. And D. To delegate all authority to the head of service. I think the right option is option C, and option C says they should ensure fair hearing before taking disciplinary action. The Federal Civil Service should ensure procedural fairness by allowing the accused person to respond before enforcing any disciplinary records or measures. Option C. Question number 43. According to Rule 100304A, what is the duty of every officer when a case of misconduct comes to his notice? A. Ignore it if it doesn't concern him. B. Report it to the head of service directly. C. Report it to an officer superior to the one involved. And D. Wait for a formal complaint to be lodged. The right option is option C, and option C says you should do what? Report it to an officer superior to the one involved. Question number 44. Question number 44 says, to whom should a superior officer report a case of misconduct after it is brought to his attention? A. The head of civil service. B. The director of human resources through the head of department. C. The minister in charge of the ministry. And D. The auditor general. The auditor general. The right option is option B, and option B says the director of human resources through his head of department. Through his head of the department. The right option is option B, and option B is under the Rule 100304 paragraph 5, which says superior officer must report misconduct through his HOD to the Director of Human Resources without delay. Question number 45. If the Director of Human Resources consider an officer misconduct serious, what action may be recommended? A. What action will be recommended? The right option is option C. A. Immediate dismissal. C. Demotion. C. Interdiction. And D. Suspension without pay. Now, the question say if Director HRM consider an officer's misconduct serious, what action may be recommended? And that is interdiction. PSR rule paragraph 4B provides that if the Director HRM consider it necessary, he may recommend that the officer be interdicted pending investigation. Option C. Question number 43 is who has the authority to interdict an officer after receiving a misconduct report? A. The head of department. B. The minister. C. The permanent secretary or head of extra-ministerial office. And D. The director of finance. The right option is option C, and option C says the permanent secretary, head of extra-ministerial office. PSR rule paragraph 4C says the permanent secretary or head of ministerial office has the power to interdict an officer after considering the report. Option C. Question number 47. According to Rule 10.03.05, when an officer is found guilty of misconduct not serious enough for dismissal, what may the Federal Civil Service Commission do? A. Recommend retirement. B. Investigate the matter and impose a lesser punishment. C. Issue a public reprimand. D. Transfer the officer immediately. The right option is option B, and option B says you should investigate the matter and impose a lesser punishment. Investigate the matter and impose a lesser punishment. PSR Rule 10.03.05 provides that the Commission may investigate and impose a lesser punishment such as reduction in rank and deferment of increment when the dismissal is not warranted. So the right option is option B. Question number 48. What does Rule 10.03.06 state regarding disciplinary proceedings against a female officer on maternity leave? A. They should continue during the leave. They should be postponed until after the leave. C. They should be cancelled. And D. They should be handled by the Director HR. The right option is option B, and option B says they should be postponed until after the officers leave. PSR 1003 paragraph 6 specified that disciplinary proceedings against a female staff shall be postponed until her maternity leave expires, but the postponement does not prejudice the proceeding. Paragraph option B. Question number 49. According to PSR rule, chapter 10, section 3, paragraph 12, which of the following activity is strictly prohibited within office premises during working hour? A. Attending official meeting, conducting private phone calls. C. Hawking or engaging in trading. And D. Discussing sport activity. The right option is option C, and option C says hawking or engaging in trading. Rule 1003 paragraph 12 explicitly prohibited officers from hawking merchandise or engaging in trading within office hours during working hours. Question number 50, which is the last but not the least. What right is guaranteed to an officer under investigation for misconduct according to the PSR rule 10.03.05? A. The right to be represented by a lawyer only. B. The right to remain silent. C. The right to know the whole case and make a defense. D. The right to transfer departments. The right option is option C, and option C says the right to know the whole case and make a defense. PSR Rule 1003 paragraph 5 affirms the officer's right to know the entire case against him and to have an adequate opportunity to make his defense before any disciplinary action is taken. So the right option is option C, the right to know the whole case and make a defense. This is the last uh, question we'll be taking for today. And as we end that question, I want to say thanks so much for watching. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel, I want you to do that so that you can be notified once our videos are uploaded. Even if you belong to our community, the first step is to subscribe. Once you subscribe, so that once our videos are uploaded, you can be notified. I want to say thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in our next presentation.